Expedia and Visit Scotland invite you to come step into centuries of history that await in Scotland. Castles steeped in legend, walk along cobblestone streets. Come share the warmth of stories passed down through generations. This is a place with a past that is fully present today and all yours to explore. Plan your Scottish escape today at expedia.com/Visit Scotland.
Your LinkedIn feed can give you daily insights from your professional community. It cannot keep you updated on the daily office gossip.
Oh my gosh, no way.
It can help you stay informed on the latest news and trends in your industry. It cannot stop your boss from trying to start a new office trend. Who's ready for Flip-Flop Fridays? And while we can't stop all of the office jargon...
Does this vibe with our collaborative lattice work metric?
LinkedIn can start taking your career to new heights. LinkedIn is the network that works for you.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Teach, Sleep, Repeat. My name is Dylan.
And my name's Hayden.
And this is episode 200.
Oh, my days. What a big one.
We made it, Hayden, and I thought, what better way to celebrate than to get a guest on? I was thinking, who could we speak to? The Education Secretary?
Oh, yeah, that'd be good.
Might be quite good, mightn't it? So the Department for Education reached out to us. It was on the back of a reel that we did on socials about getting a bit frustrated that the Education Secretary maybe wasn't answering questions properly. To be fair to them, in the email they said, look, you're frustrated at this. We get that. Why don't you come and ask your own questions? And we thought, sure, of course. We've said a million times before, we get the opportunity to come and talk to the people in charge about things that we think are important, that our listeners think are important in education, parents of SEND children who are fighting, we absolutely will. So that's been arranged for a bit now. And yeah, I just wanted to say, whether you're a returning listener or brand new, welcome. We're going to ask the questions that we think are really important to you guys and to us personally. But there is one caveat that I did just want to say. I know you'll be sat there at home thinking, oh gosh, I really hope they ask about this thing. There are some subjects and topics we did not get a chance to talk to the Education Secretary about. And that does not automatically mean that we don't think they're important or worth asking.
Of course. We had a very, very ambitious list of about 14 topics that we had, funnily enough, already whittled down to 14. And then we looked at our half an hour slot and we thought, is it realistic to get through these questions? And we were like, obviously not. We're not going to get through half of these questions, which we did not.
No.
Enough.
And we still managed to talk about a lot of different things: maternity pay, paternity pay, the SEND white paper, funding for schools, the dropping birth rate, loads. So I'm sure there's something in there for you anyway. And yeah, let us know, because we're going to be doing a reaction episode the week after to the reaction to this episode. It's like reactionception going on, something strange. But we're waffling on now. So without further ado, let's get into our chat with the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson. Thank you for having us, Secretary of State. I really appreciate it. First thing I think we need to address is recently, I know your social strategy and what you've been trying to reach different people, and Gemma Collins was in the building last week, and nearly everything we've seen from our socials, where we see teacher facing, obviously, was asking the question, what on earth's going on? Why is this happening? So I think it's only fair, really. We can ask you, do you stand by that decision? Do you think it was a good idea?
Yeah, so obviously I've got lots of different audiences I want to reach. I want to reach teachers, educators. That's why you're here today, so I can reach those people working in education. But I also want to reach parents and young people. And Gemma Collins has got an enormous reach, particularly in some of the groups that we as a government, I would find hard to reach. And I wanted to talk about the vocational education reforms, the new qualifications that we're bringing in. And, you know, a lot of the discussion has, I think, focused on what people feel, you know, what does Gemma Collins have to offer? A lot of the conversation that we had, she talked about how she loved reading when she was growing up, how important that was to her, how important it is that young people stick in at school and work hard. And, you know, she said, you know, not every young person can be an influencer, so they have to find what, you know, what works for them. And that's the purpose of what I'm seeking to achieve. I want to reach parents and young people as well as educators. Completely. I think what a lot of people were saying was, I think it was down the lines of the timing. Obviously, everything was released. It was like teased out there, like we don't know what's going on, and the period of time the consultation had just ended. And I think a lot of people in that field who are experts for SEND, on the frontline parents, had felt like maybe they weren't properly listened to over that period, or questions weren't answered properly. And when they then see a reality star coming on and getting a face-to-face interview, do you understand the pushback? I do, to an extent. However, you know, if you only have to look at my social media feed and the output from the department to understand, I've spent a lot of time speaking with parents as well. We've run consultation events across the country, online events too. Actually, just the day that we published the content with Gemma Collins, I met with parents and campaigners about how we can deliver a better SEND system. So I can do that, do that kind of social media time with Gemma Collins. I can then also go and visit schools and meet with parents. I do all of that. That is the bread and butter of what I do. And making sure SEND reforms work well is my number one priority at the moment. It's what I'm spending so much time on delivering, and where I do think we have a really fantastic opportunity to make sure we've got a better system of support for children.
Sure, brilliant. Well, a lot of the people who've been talking about it did ask you questions. I saw some of the pre-recorded bits, they sent bits in. And I think we can maybe go to that now and talk about the SEND white paper. And I think one of the reasons we're here today as well is I think someone in your team saw us post about how when those questions were answered, again, it was felt like it wasn't really getting to the point of really addressing, I think, what's a fair concern for parents, a fair concern for people in school who are dealing with these every day. And I just wanted to really narrow down on this idea of the EHCP and the new ISP system that's coming in. So obviously one big push that you're going for with this new reform is the most complex needs children will be the ones receiving the EHCP. And I think in the long term, that means that fewer children who otherwise would have had an EHCP in the previous system now won't have that, but will move on to this new system with the ISP. And one of the questions that was asked was about, with the ISP, have parents and families and children lost that right to appeal, that legal backing to actually get what's written in that plan delivered for that child? And I know a lot of the responses were about, obviously it's a legal requirement to have an ISP, but can you just confirm now what will happen in terms of the children who would have otherwise had the EHCP? Have they lost their legal backing and their right to appeal and tribunal through moving to the ISP now?
So there's two things I'd say, and then I'll answer directly the question. So firstly, I completely understand how nervous and anxious parents are when we talk about changing the system, because we know that the system isn't working at the minute. Parents have to fight so hard. It doesn't always work for school staff either. But whenever you talk about change, that itself generates worry. And this is a consultation. The consultation that's just concluded, a genuine consultation, not a tick box exercise, one where we've really taken the time, both ahead of publishing the white paper and the consultation, and then in that proper consultation period, to hear directly from parents, from educators, from health staff about what we need to do to deliver a better system. So whilst I understand the anxiety that people have, is, we will be taking on board the very reasonable challenge that people have put to us in a number of key areas. And on the move from EHCPs and the shift over time, this is over an extended period of time to make sure that we get this right. And in that time that we build up the system, we put the extra investment in to make sure, and the training for staff as well, to make sure that we do that in a way that delivers better outcomes for children. All of this is about better outcomes for children with SEND who at the moment don't get the experiences or the support they need. Where it comes to ISPs, that will be backed up. That'll be on a statutory footing. I have heard through the consultation, the concerns that parents have raised around how this will work in practice.
Yeah, more about after. Yeah. Obviously, it's a legal requirement that exists, but it's more about if that's not being met, they're really worried that actually over time, they won't have the same legal rights to fight that. They're sure they can go through the school system. Eventually, they go through that. I know they can go to the Department for Education, etc. But the actual right to a tribunal, which we know over 95% of tribunals are successful. So clearly, that's a route that parents feel they have to take. If we take away the opportunity for those children who would have otherwise had it, that's the worry, I think. And that's really, I think, what people want an answer to. And if it is being stripped, I think they just want to know, basically.
This is a consultation, so this is an area we're asking the question about. I will reflect really seriously on what parents have told us, what teachers, what health staff have told us through that process. But more children will have access to support because more children will have an ISP, therefore more support. The other point is also that both through the investment into schools, but also the Experts at Hand programme, it will be easier for children, even those who are waiting for an EHCP, or in the system, to get access to educational psychologist support, speech and language support, and much, much more besides. The tribunal will stay, so the tribunal will be retained.
Is that for EHCP only?
But we're looking to reform how that system works, particularly where it comes to placements, for example, for children. Sure. But alongside that, investing more to create the specialist provision that's needed, more specialist provision in mainstream too. All of this, the move from one system to another will take time, and we've done it deliberately, carefully. But we're seeking to invest, right now from this year in getting us to where we need to be ahead of that bigger change. So now the consultation's ended, we're obviously going to go through a period of reflecting really carefully on everything that people have shared with us through that process. And then, once that's been done, we'll set out next steps for that. And on the specialist side, the EHCPs, there'll be less of a postcode lottery, because even now children who have an EHCP, it varies wildly in terms of what's recommended. It's a postcode lottery. Those specialist provision packages that will be nationally defined, developed by experts, written by experts, that will also lead to a real improvement for those children as well.
I think ultimately a lot of parents sort of unanimously screaming out, saying they hear this, they've heard this in other answers, and I think there's a huge lack of trust right now, probably because of the last 10, 15 years, really, in education. And they hear what you're saying, but ultimately they're looking at their situation with their child and saying, I can fight for an EHCP for my child right now, and that will come with legal backing and it will come with funding. And my child in the new system will not get this EHCP because the threshold has been bumped up. They'll be under the ISP system where it's not going to be legally backed. Well, it would be legally enforced to start, but and it won't come with the same funding. So I guess the frustration from them is they just want a real straight answer of, is this objectively worse for my child in this new system? Even though on the meta level, we're catching more children perhaps through the ISP system by moving that threshold up to EHCP and gathering way more children through the ISP. Is my child, though, going to get less through this system when they would have previously got an EHCP?
Yeah, I mean, for children obviously currently going through the system, we're doing this very, very carefully in terms of the transition from one system to the next. And this is decade long. I mean, this is a decade long transformation. What I would say is I completely understand why parents are sceptical, cynical, lack trust, because, they've had years of promises. They've had a total failure to deliver what their children need. And I totally, totally understand that. The only thing I can say, I mean, we can talk about the policy detail, but I think the thing that matters, and it's a consultation, so it's not the finished. It's closed now. Yeah. But I think what I think is more important is just setting out the intention behind the reform, which is I do believe that what we are seeking to do and what we will deliver will be better for children. Will be earlier, more investment going in, better support, and I do think we have to be ambitious about believing a better system is possible for children. I know where we are now; it doesn't feel like that can be achieved, but I genuinely believe we can do better by children with SEND, and we can have a better system in school and in terms of health support that identifies those needs more quickly, backs parents, helps children, and delivers better outcomes. And that has always been the focus of these reforms.
I think absolutely. I think the theme behind it and the push, I think you can really get people on side to say we really want to help SEND children. But I think the details are important, though. I know we don't get bogged. You said we don't get bogged down in it, but I think parents are living it every single day, and that is what they see. And I think there was just a frustration essentially of just, if this is going to happen, I just want to know that yes, it's going to happen. So currently there won't be a route to get down legal backing in terms of tribunal for an ISP. If my child would have got an EHCP, but under this new system they won't, that will be removed as it stands currently. But over the consultation, you're saying essentially, look, we'll listen and we might change stuff as we go through.
The whole purpose of a consultation is to set out a set of proposals, in the principles, but also the policy detail. And that, the policy detail does matter, I suppose. Of course,
it affects children, doesn't it?
Of course it does, and I spend all my time working on all of that policy detail. But I suppose the bigger argument is I need to persuade parents that this is achievable, and persuade staff working in education that we can do it together. Sure. So that's the bigger picture alongside the detail of it. But actually, many of those children that you're describing will get more support in the new system, and there'll be more investment going in to make that happen. And
I guess that's the worry, isn't it? If they on paper are getting that support, like in the current system, the EHCP, which is at even higher standard, they're still not getting that support, which is why tribunals are so successful. Stripping that right away, I think, worries people, because it's okay to say they'll get that support. But if they aren't getting that support for very real reasons, where schools are stretched completely on their knees, that's the worry, where it's okay to say it will happen. But when it doesn't happen, because realistically there will be many cases where it doesn't happen, parents just want that right to back themselves up.
And accountability matters. I mean, one of the key themes that's come through the consultation is that accountability, whether that at a school level, at the level of an individual child and the relationship with health services, local authorities, councils, how they operate, accountability and making sure that parents and staff can ensure that children get what they need is absolutely critical.
Completely. No, that's why we're here as well. So
100%. I can, in all honesty, I can still understand because even through this conversation, I can just put my social media brain on. I can still see those comments coming in and saying, "Cool, this is all good, and this is all great talk, and like Dylan said, this is all good things to say. But what if? With my child, what if? And I still think people are going to struggle with that. In honesty.
Yeah, I think you wanted to mention about maternity, because it kind of, I know you recently bumped up. So maternity pay, I know for teachers, full pay going from 4 weeks to 8 weeks. And, Hayden's partner's expecting. She's a teacher.
Yeah, so that's our second. So we've both been in teaching for a long time. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Obviously, it's personal to me for that reason. But like Dylan just said, 4 weeks up to 8 weeks is genuinely a welcome step in the right direction. And we said this on our podcast before. That's a great step. But let's look at the comparison. Civil servants in this department, this building we're in right now, the women in this building will get 26 weeks of maternity leave, and the teachers at full pay, and the teachers are bumping up from 4 weeks to 8 weeks. So, do you feel it's acceptable that the women in this building get more maternity pay than the women in our schools teaching children?
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
This spring, Uber Eats has you covered. Whether you're celebrating mom, dad, or your favorite grad, not all of us are great planners, and with the Uber Eats gift hub, you don't have to be. Send flowers, perfume, champagne, or just their favorite meal straight to their door. Gifts arrive in as little as 25 minutes, and you can add a personalized video message for that additional so-not-last-minute touch. So this spring, get a leg up on gift giving with Uber Eats. Last-minute gifts that land every time. Must be 21 or older to purchase alcohol. Product availability varies per region. See app for details.
I think this is a really important first step, but it's a first step.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I say very explicitly in the white paper, which is, this is the first change in 25 years. Yeah. So there's been nothing happen for a very, very long time.
Very welcomed, as I say.
So
yeah.
Absolutely, but it's a first step. And of course, over time, I do want it to become more generous for teachers. Of course I do. But I can only do what I'm confident I can pay for and I can deliver. So I completely recognise the frustration. I appreciate the differences that exist, across industries as well on all of that, and how often it can be more generous in many private sector workforces as well. But this is an important priority for me. It's why, in what is, pretty challenging environment in terms of money, I fought really hard to make sure that we could deliver on that doubling, but it is a first step.
But that's what people want to hear, genuinely, because I think what they generally hear is we've made this move and it's the best thing ever, and that's great, it's solved. I think that's how they feel it comes from politics in general. That just seems to be the game of politics. Look, we're the best party, we've done everything, we've solved it. When really people just want to hear real conversations. They want to hear you say, and with respect to you saying, this is our first step, but ultimately I know it's not the end goal. Of course I want women to have more. Of course I want women in schools to have the same maternity pay as the women in this building.
Well, what is your end goal? What would you say would be successful in the long run? I want that for teachers.
I want it to be, genuinely, I want it to be better right across society. I'm
Mm.
obviously responsible for, schools, but I would want it to be as good as, the kind of most private sector, public sector workforces. There's variation across them, but I want there to be more. And, it is the right thing to do, just as a point of principle. I've always campaigned for better rights for women, so it's an important principle. But it's important if we want to keep brilliant women teachers. The biggest group we see leaving are women in their 30s.
And I think this is the thing we saw a lot of people say in terms of when women, like you said, women in their 30s come back from maternity, huge swathes are leaving education. And I think it's a culmination of a lot of factors rather than just, I think it worked out £900 to £1,500 extra that they were getting from this. Very welcome, of course, but things like the workload, the flexible working, the issues of trying to get that with their childcare. It's lots of prongs, and not to show
it's no one thing in isolation. No, it's all of those measures together, and PPA time, flexibility, allowing people
expressing milk if they're breastfeeding.
Yeah, and transitions back in, allowing for people to reduce to part-time hours if that's what they need to do. Yeah. It's one part of a much bigger picture where, for a very long time, teaching is a predominantly female profession. Yeah. But we haven't looked after women in the profession as well as we should have done as a country and I want to change that.
Do you think part of that reason is because there are so many, and any kind of change that you put into place to bump that up is going to have a massive bill? Do you think it comes down to affordability and that's it? Because I don't think anyone that I've spoken to, and you yourself in this conversation, have said, of course I want it. But people listening who, Hayden's partner who's got a child on the way, hearing that is nice, it's cool, but ultimately 8 weeks full pay and then they've got to live on statutory pay for a while. The other part of it is, paternity pay in general. Paternity pay hasn't changed in however long. I think I saw a stat the other day, last time Arsenal won the league, it was introduced. Arsenal just won the league again after 22 years, it's still the same.
We've got a review underway into parental leave, and I obviously am responsible. It's another government department that are leading on this work, but I oversee the equalities work across government. I really want to make sure that dads can play a full role in their children's lives as well.
It's huge for us, isn't it? When we had our children, we were almost hoping and praying that the child was delivered around a half term, just so we could add another week on, and also that week was fully paid. It's I think it's about £180 a week on statutory pay. It's such a big dip, and also my partner had a C-section, and for 6 weeks, very, very confined to bed, can't pick baby up properly. I had to go back to work after 3 weeks, and that to me was just insane. Like, even at the level of make it statutory for 6 weeks, if someone's having a C-section, they can't lift the baby up. It's like basic care, and I just feel like if you compare it to other European countries, we're at the bottom of the list. And I know a lot of the time in politics we like to say we're seventh in Europe, or we're top in Europe, but I think it's real sometimes to hear we're the lowest in Europe. So it feels like it's something that's really, really important to us. It's really important to a lot of people, and I know there's a consultation on, and that's great, and listening is really good. But when do you think action will happen with this?
Yeah. So, as I say, it's another department leading on this work, but I'm involved in that. It's a big priority for us, but then rights at work has been a big priority for us as a government too. We are genuinely, sincerely committed to improving rights at work for people. So, more women now have access to maternity pay, full stop, sick pay at work, the right to, request flexible working, all of those important steps forward that we've already made. There's more to do, of course there is. And, of course money is a consideration. Money's tight. We have prioritised investment in education. If money were no object, I'd go faster sooner. Sure. But it is. That is the reality.
Well, I mean, there's far fewer men in education. Might be something we can tackle a bit sooner.
But that's the issue when it comes to the number, and what's right. I can understand why there's a bit of a discrepancy there. But in terms of moving on to a different idea here, in terms of currently the birth rate, it's very low. We work in education, and we've spoken to a lot of schools, and they say the same thing in terms of the school we work at locally. They are having to lower their form entry, so there's just not enough children to fill seats in the school. It means teachers are there's redundancies going on. Is that having to move money around and funding where it's linked to the the number of children in the class. That's almost like a stealth saving that's going on in the background. And I think about 310,000 it's predicted to drop by in the next 4 years or so. And that's a huge amount of money that will be saved through per pupil funding going to schools. We'll see schools closing, small schools will struggle, inner city schools where the birth rate's particularly low, like in London. We're seeing 1 in 5 schools closing, I think, or have a real threat of closing. What I wanted to talk to you about was, this to me screams out, and we speak to teachers and teaching assistants and staff every day about how our class sizes are so big. And it screams out as an opportunity to really ring fence this money, not take that stealth saving over the years where it's just dwindling, and allow class sizes to drop whilst maintaining staff. I wondered your view on this over the next few years, because otherwise, if we don't do that, schools will close, schools will shrink, staff will lose their job. And whilst that might look good for, vacancies aren't as big anymore because there's not enough jobs going, and maybe training targets will be met because training targets will drop, it's a real opportunity to just grab this and think, if we're really serious about inclusion in mainstream and really serious about helping teachers, the training's fantastic, excellent work, we're going to get teachers more training. No amount of training will have the effect that teaching a third of the size in the class would have in giving the children exactly what they need. So I just wanted to get your opinion on this. What will happen, do you think, in the next 3 or 4 years under your leadership in education, where we can really take this opportunity to lower class sizes?
So this whole question of the birth rate and falling rules is a really big challenge and not an easy one. But I think, to go to your final point there, it does present some opportunities in terms of not just class sizes as you described, but also around inclusion also, as you mentioned. Definitely. So using that space, how do we make sure that where space is becoming available, we use that to create, for example, inclusion bases. I've seen some brilliant examples, including in Sunderland and my own community, where that's working really well. And we've got a lot of work underway around this. I mean, what I would also say is that, the birth rate is as low as it's been for a very, very long time. And this is obviously an international trend that we're seeing. Sure. here, I want to make sure that people can make choices about family size that are right for them. And I know that many people make that decision because just they can't.
Financial constraints. We're in our early 30s. All of our friends are of the age where we would, traditionally by now would have 2 or 3 children. The average number of children me and my friends have is like 1 or half, because they're in the same boat. They just think, I'm already struggling. We're both working full time. We're struggling to get through rent right now. Cost of living's gone through the roof. I can't provide what I would want to for my child. So we're going to put it off a little bit. And I think that's a huge driving factor.
And we've delivered obviously a huge expansion in early years education and childcare. And, parents are saving around £8,000 per year per child because of that extra investment that we're putting into those early years entitlements. So that's a big part of it. But this is an uncertain area because it's hard to do some of the projections around this well. We went through a period, pre-2010 where the birth rate fell and then very rapidly increased. And, some decisions were taken to close schools only to then have to desperately find places. So
do you think it's a good idea to ring fence that money then, if it's so unpredictable? Because what's currently happening in schools is, it's unpredictable like you're saying, but it's not unpredictable in terms of, therefore that school are going to get less money now. They're going to have to make teacher redundancies now. They're going to have to make those decisions in this unpredictability. So taking that out in terms of just saying, look, we'll ride this for a couple of years. We can guarantee X amount of funding. If your role falls, let's see if it goes back up. Because what's currently happening is, although, it's unpredictable, it's having a real effect on schools where they can't have the same number of staff. And if anything, what's happening is they can't afford the staff and then children are being squeezed into classrooms even more just to try and save some money.
Well, the worst case, the schools are closing.
Yes.
I think it is right that the money follows the child. The question is how that sits in the overall kind of funding envelope. And we are reviewing various aspects of school funding. It's right that we take the time to work through what that would mean and how that would play through into the system for different schools in different areas. I think the point of challenge I'd offer on this is that there's also a fairness point across the system. So how do you make sure that you're spending money well for the best outcomes? And if you are, in effect, artificially putting more money into a school with fewer children, if the school up the road, which is a secondary, which still has bigger numbers because the birth rate fall is further down.
It's not consistent, is it?
And it's about how we have a fair funding system. And it's not this. This is genuinely quite a hard area to grapple with. And I think the birth rate is lower than it ought to be because I think people are making decisions based on all of those circumstances.
It's macroeconomic, isn't it? It's across the board.
And it won't stay like that forever. Not least, I think, with the extra. We want to build more houses for people. We want people to have more support work.
That is the issue, isn't it? Where we know it's not going to stay like that forever. But let's just say for argument's sake it didn't, and it did pick back up. My big worry is that in this interim 5-year period where schools do close, when it picks back up, what are we going to do? Reopen a school?
And that's exactly what we're working on.
Is it fair when, in the same counter argument, is it fair that, okay, there'll be some areas where the birth rate is lower than other areas and that maybe more affluent areas? Oh, the school didn't close here. It was okay here. In other areas, they closed by the dozens. And you think both of those outcomes are pretty bad, like realistically, okay, in the fairness metric. But what we could do is we can say, we know how much money we put into schools. We can ring fence that. The worst case scenario is that it was a waste of our time because the birth rate went back up anyway and we didn't need to worry about it and it was going to cost that much anyway. The best case scenario is it saves people's jobs, it saves schools, it saves the stress of the families.
And that is what we're grappling with. And I've actually just today been doing a lot of work around all of this, and it's an ongoing area because it's part of that wider funding. It's the per pupil funding, but it's some of the wider funding that sits around schools too.
It's that per pupil thing, isn't it? That's what's causing the issue, because I can see why what you're saying in one area it's different to another area. But if we were to go down the road of actually, do you know what, class sizes are just too big, even if the birth rate wasn't an issue for a second, and we just think, do you know what, though, class sizes are huge. Again, in Europe, it's on the scale of, it's one of the biggest. That's going to cost a lot of money to solve. I understand that. But that is the biggest thing I see people say all the time. And if we're thinking about money going into training for SEND, I am in no way saying that's not an important use of money. It is. But without it being alongside things like, I don't have a class of 32 children, 3 of which have an EHCP, 10 of which are on an ISP. I as a teacher, I felt it myself. I felt like I was failing the kids. And that, I will never forget that moment where I sat there and I just thought, I can't do more than this personally right now. And if I had someone come in and give me training, it would have been grateful, but then I would have still gone back to my class of 32 children, limited support, my school are getting rid of assistant teachers all the way through. And I just physically couldn't do it. And it would have such an impact, and to just have a smaller class size, and it would help me personally, and it would help other teachers and other assistant teachers. help the children more, that would have such a huge impact. And I just feel like this is an opportunity to try and do that.
Well, I have noted your lobbying plea on all of that. And no, I understand the case that you make. I suppose
I've got no interest here other than helping the kids.
No, completely. And that is, of course, what I want as well. The other question that I have to kind of work on is also, where we're spending money, putting money into schools, where does that get the best outcomes for children and young people? And I completely recognise the point about class sizes and what that means for staff. But it's also why, we as a government have prioritised, ending the 2-child limit, expanding free school meals, bringing in free breakfast clubs, because it's everything that sits around families that, your lives are more difficult if you've got children who are living in temporary accommodation, or that, the children are hungry, the family are really struggling. It leads to big safeguarding challenges, all of that. So it's the money going directly into our schools. And of course, that is incredibly important, and we are investing more.
But the social side as well.
Wider, and also the early years, the Best Start family hubs, bringing back the Best Assure Start. If children are arriving at school having had a really great early years experience, their family have had the health support that they need, and families are just happier, healthier, less worried and less pressured. That means that when that child arrives with you, they're set up to succeed.
I've got one final question. I'm very aware that we're running out of time, but this is something that as Dylan said, we speak to thousands of teachers. We've got our podcast. We've been in teaching for the last 10 years, and this is something that people really, really, really want to talk about. And it's about pay rises for staff. And obviously, we've had many, many years of the whole battle between teachers need a pay rise. Oh, it's unfunded. It's coming out of school budgets. Squoze. And it gets to the point where we've seen it happen. Teaching assistants, we're losing them from schools. People are trying to fight for fully funded pay. So every head really listening to this, and we speak to head teachers as well, is doing doing the same sum to fund this pay rise. Something else has to be cut, and we're at the point where there are no more resources to be cut. I've worked in that system for 10 years across multiple schools. There is nothing left to cut. So it comes down to and I'll quote from you guys: adjusting the makeup of leadership teams and deployment of support staff. And I think pretty unanimously online, people read that as, okay, cool, so someone's got to get fired. So what is it in that situation? Who are we firing first? Is it someone in the leadership team? Is it another member of support staff?
We receive recommendations in a report from the STRB, so we're in the middle of going through that process. I do understand the point, and in the first pay award that I announced was fully funded. There was additional money going in. On the second occasion, we asked schools to meet the first 1%. I appreciate that is not always easy, but we've also been doing a lot of work with schools around energy costs, around procurement costs, around supply staff costs, where we think there is more that if the schools that have signed up to our energy kind of contract have saved huge amounts of money.
Yeah. Does it make up that gap?
It will differ in different contexts, but we think there's more we can do on that front with schools. But we need to lead that. If you're a small primary school, you're not going to get the best deal, but we need to be more interventionist and supporting schools. So around areas that are on the non-staffing side. So prioritize, trying to reduce down as much as possible in areas where we can make savings, as you would as a consumer. But I understand the point, and we obviously I'll be setting out the response. I'll be setting out the response to the peer review body, which in due course. So
so that might change slightly, essentially. But I think the issue is, again, where we've worked in schools, we've talked to our head teachers, we've talked to assistant head teachers. I know an assistant head teacher who's retiring this year, and he was breathing a sigh of relief, almost as if to say, he's a Senko as well, and he said he feels like his workload's going to go up massively, and he doesn't want to make those decisions where I'm going to have to give my staff this pay rise, but it does mean I have to cut something else, and it even means that the children won't have enough workbooks. A teaching assistant will just not have to have their contract renewed, and it's what people up and down the country are saying to us. And I just think, in the context of your push for inclusion in mainstream, I think it's very clear there are some children who absolutely would thrive in mainstream. I can think of children I taught with small adjustments and real forefront of inclusion. They thrived in mainstream and it was fantastic. But there's always going to be other children who simply need a different setting. And the worry about the inclusion hubs is that we have to make sure that they're really working right for those children. But the point being, if we're going to have the mainstream inclusion that you want to see, we have to protect the jobs of not just the teachers, but the teaching assistants, who are the ones on the ground most of the time working with those children day in, day out. That's my worry. And when you think about the NEU's recent indicative ballot to strike, and teachers saying, yes, I think we will strike, and saying that teaching assistants, I think it was 99% said it's just invaluable. Can you speak to those people now and just say, look, I understand. I know why you want to strike. I know why you think this is invaluable. We can't afford it, or we're going to make sure that it's funded.
Do you hear that? Sounds like breakfast is ready. Because Quaker's coming in hot with morning nutrition. 100% whole grain oats and a good source of fiber to fuel the rhythm of your morning and kickstart your day. And that sounds absolutely delicious. Fuel to start whatever's next. Quaker, official sponsor of FIFA World Cup 26.
Meet the new iSIMS, the single talent acquisition platform that's fully future-ready. It works wherever and however you hire, with insights no one else offers. One solution that fits seamlessly into your existing tech stack, which is why IT and HR leaders trust it. With the best of enterprise-grade software and AI, iSIMS helps you identify and secure the right talent faster. iSIMS, powering exceptional hiring. Learn more at isims.com.
Our support staff do an absolutely amazing job, and our schools couldn't run without them. It was a big priority for us to bring back the school support staff negotiating body that was legislated for to make sure that school support staff have got a voice once more, because they don't have the voice or the recognition in the same way that teaching unions representing teaching staff are able to exercise their voice and get things done for their members. So that is a big change we're bringing. I mean, on the point about inclusion, we are putting more money in through the Inclusive Mainstream Fund. That's to tilt money directly into schools so that they can make decisions about some of those smaller adjustments.
I think that worked out to, I think it was one teaching assistant per primary school, roughly. So I just feel like when I see schools losing 2, 3, 4, I just worry that there's a gap. That's all. I get it.
And there's more money going into school budgets overall. Look, I know the context is challenging. I fought hard to make sure that education is prioritised. This government has prioritised investment in education in what is a really challenging backdrop. I know people...
No, it's really challenging. It comes down to money. I've seen it before. People say, look, it's money. And I think I understand your point completely where you're trying to battle for it. But I think it's the honesty of just, there's a shortfall. We are going to lose teaching assistants.
Look, I think the other thing for me to be honest about is, we had years and years where education was not prioritised and investment didn't go in. And if I could come in and wave a magic wand and, I would do that. But over time, with the investment that's going in, we are driving that change, both in terms of school budgets, but also that wider support around families. £3 billion of investment to lift the 2-child limit, an extra $1 billion to massively expand free school meals. All of these will make a big difference to staff working in schools. But I appreciate there is still that point about how we make sure we've got the right staff in the right places and they've got the support and the pay that they deserve.
Ultimately for the children as well, just to make that really clear.
Absolutely. But yes, it's about how we value the people that work in education, and that is my responsibility. It's one I take really seriously. Have we gone so far? Absolutely. Would I like to go further? Yes, of course. That's my job.
Yeah, I think that's what people want to hear. And yeah,
they want to see it. They've heard it already. They want to see it. That's the thing, and that's the challenge, like you said, that you've got over the next few years, and it is a huge challenge.
Thank you for having us in. I appreciate it, and I do appreciate you really listening to those questions and what's on the forefront of people's minds in education right now. So thank you.
No, thanks both.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed that chat. Let us know down in the comments below what you thought of it. We'll be reacting to everything you guys say, ready for next week's episode. So follow wherever you get your podcasts and hit that notification bell, and it'll be in your feeds next Monday. See you then.
See ya.